I guarantee there'll be women's lives affected by men being in prison. I mean, there'll be children that are missing out on dads. There'll be wives missing out on husbands. So it doesn't just affect the man in jail, it affects the women that are part of that man's life as well. So by helping men, we help society as a whole, and we definitely help women.
Hi, I'm Naomi Murphy, and this is the Locked Up Living podcast, where we talk with a wide range of people about harsh aspects of institutional life.
We also explore some of the ways to overcome them and to grow and develop. I'm David Jones. So join us every Wednesday morning, 6 o'clock UK time, for a fresh podcast.
So really delighted to welcome along today's guest, who's Nick Fletcher, the Conservative MP for Don Valley, where he's represented Don Valley constituents since 2019. We were particularly interested in having Nick on the podcast to discuss his work as chair of the All Party Parliamentary Working Group for issues concerning men and boys, since men and boys are overrepresented in the criminal justice system, which we talk about a lot on this podcast. Welcome along today, Nick.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. Thank you for having me.
Hi Nick, thanks very much for coming along. It's really good to meet with you. I'm going to ask the first few questions, which are mainly about sort of process, really, because we're interested in process. One of the things that got us started on this podcast business was that we wanted to think with people about ways to achieve positive change, about the mechanics of that, about the techniques that may facilitate it, and things like that. Well, you're obviously central to the nation's process regarding these issues, so thanks very much for being here. What is the history of the Men's and Boys Working Group? Can you tell us something about it, and how did you come to be involved in it?
Well, I wasn't part of it right at the beginning. I think I joined just a little later. It started relatively early in my time becoming a member of Parliament. But I believe it was a chap called Chris Bradley who spoke with a gentleman called Mike Bell, who runs a men's issues website called Equilaw, and they asked a chap that they knew called Mark Brooks, who runs Mankind Initiative, and I think basically they all come together and thought it would be a good idea if Parliament had an all-party parliamentary group for issues affecting men and boys, and I was a member of the group, but as time progressed, I was becoming more and more interested in this issue, and well, I'm sure we'll speak later about that. But yeah, that's how it actually started. So it is thanks to the three chaps that I've just mentioned there. Really.
And when was that, roughly speaking?
I believe it was beginning of 2020. I was elected in December 2019. And so it would have been early 2020, I believe.
Right, thanks very much. So quite late on in the day, really. That's interesting by itself, isn't it? I think one of the people we've spoken to quite recently has done some research at Aylesbury Prison on that transition from a young offenders institute into a sort of man's prison. It's a terribly kind of interesting and rather neglected area. So who decides on the membership of the groups? Because this one doesn't seem to be particularly all-party. Why do you think that is?
It is. In all fairness, I've actually got the latest numbers here, and it's 19 Conservative members, 7 Labour members, 4 Independents, and 3 from other parties, and 3 cross benches. So I don't think it's not too far off the ratios of what we've got in Parliament, and we have 21 men and 15 women members too, which same again. I'm really quite pleased about. I think that's the one thing that we do tend to forget when we're talking about men's issues, is that, I mean, one of the main reasons why I want to get involved in men's issues, because it does have such an effect on women. Just like women's issues have an effect on men, and I do think we tend to silo these things, and so it's fantastic that we have got 15 women members in there too, because and as in the title, All Party, we need people from both sides of the house to bring their experiences to groups like this. Obviously, in the house when you see it, it's definitely us and them. And the Prime Minister's questions is a perfect example of that. But when you move away from the chamber, there is an awful lot of collegiate work that goes on. And I do have some good friends that are in other parties too. But back to your question, sorry, I do seem to have gone off that. We write to every MP and ask them if they would like to be members, and obviously those that do come along. There is, I think, there's in excess of 700 All Party Parliamentary groups, and I do believe you can end up joining too many. I'm the chairman of only one, and this is because this is where I want my main efforts as part of that work as an MP need to be. I'm a member of, I think, 8 or 9 APPGs, but I'm the chairman of only one. And I think I'd love to be a member of lots more, because there's so many subjects interest me. Like, I'm sure you've got so many interests that you'd like to pursue. But I think to make any real progress and to see any real change, you do have to hone in on a few issues, but not too many.
Yeah, I can see that. So there can be a tendency to assume that all men are automatically more privileged than all women. Naomi wrote these questions. I'll just point out, because I always think, particularly when I used to take my car to the garage, that women were more privileged than men. I used to hate going to the garage, but of course I think you're an engineer by background, aren't you?
Yes, I'm an electrical contractor.
Yeah, so you probably didn't have that experience at all. But do you think there are areas of life where men are more disadvantaged?
I think I've never really seen myself as disadvantaged. I mean, a lot of people say that I come from a disadvantaged part of the country and a working class background, but I never really saw it as a disadvantage. I didn't particularly know anything different, and I think it's an attitude that gets you where you want to be. But I mean, obviously, we all know that there's women have suffered at the hands of men for many years. I mean, just going back to actually getting a vote and just being treated equally in the workplace, same equal pay and things like that. So there's been a huge issue there, and I think it's extremely important that those issues were dealt with. I believe in trying. We all want a fair society. I don't think society and life's fair, but we should always try and get to that point. But I think we've definitely taken his eye off the ball while we've been trying to make amends for the centuries of things that have probably gone the wrong way. Well, have definitely gone the wrong way. But by trying to correct those, I think sometimes we overcorrect things. I think we can do that in all walks of life, not just between male and female, just between lots of different things. We tend to overcorrect. But I also do think we tend to forget people as well. When we concentrate on one demographic, we do tend to forget the other demographic. And the unfortunate thing is that the statistics prove that men are really, really struggling. I mean, 95% of the prison population is male. That can't be right. Now, does that mean I want 50% of women in? Of course it doesn't. But we're looking at something there which is and I would imagine that many of those men that have committed those crimes, there may have been crimes against women, or there will have been, I guarantee there'll be women's lives affected by men being in prison. I mean, there'll be children that are missing out on dads, there'll be wives missing out on husbands. So it doesn't just affect the man in jail, it affects the women that are part of that man's life as well. So by helping men, we help society as a whole, and we definitely help women. I mean, it's just a given that will happen. We will help women. which is a wonderful thing to do. So I do think we do overcorrect, and I do think there has been neglect in men's lives. I mean, the other statistics that we've got, 75% of the suicides are men, which is, again, is terrible. I mean, the age gap, I mean, women tend to live, I think the average age of a lady is 81, with men it's around 77. Why is that? I mean, it's fantastic that we're getting to these ages now. These ages weren't even dreamed of 60 years ago for anybody. But why is that happening? And so we need to look into this, and that's all I'm ever asking to do as the chair of the APPG. I'm a men's minister, and all these other things that I've been asking for since I became a member of Parliament is let's look into it, find out why, and that's what I believe we need to do.
I think it's really interesting to notice those disparities. But I wonder, do you think we run the risk of not seeing some other nuances by gendering disadvantage? For instance, class might be a confounding variable there, mightn't it, in terms of age of, that might be adding something else in to the picture.
Yeah, I mean, this is just, it's not a single issue. I don't think any are, but I definitely think it's a huge issue, and it affects 50% of the population or thereabouts. I mean, it is. I am the chairman of an All Party Parliamentary Group that covers 50% of the population. This is a huge amount of people that we're talking about here. Now, I'm not saying we should ever forget any of the minority, the smaller issues where it might be 1% of the population or even 0.1% of the population. But we've got a huge issue there. We've all got men in our lives, and yeah, it's harder for people who come from a tougher background where I would imagine economic makes an awful lot of difference. It does, it's bound to. But I didn't come from a wealthy background myself, and I've still managed to make a Member of Parliament. Now, it almost sounds a little boastful, that, and I don't want it to be. I'm just setting it up as an example that the economics of my background didn't deter me from becoming a Member of Parliament, which I think is a wonderful thing for society. I always say to the kids in my school, look, if I can do it, and I went to the same school as you, if I can do it, then you can do it. We just need to set those goals and work really hard, and let's not have excuses. I think disadvantage, I don't think we should be using that as a stumbling block. I think with the right attitude, the correct mentors, the right role models, and a society that tries to think about everybody and doesn't leave anybody behind, then we can do some wonderful things.
Thank you, Nick. That's a very honest and helpful answer. I'm beginning to think that I know the answer to my next question already, because I was going to ask if you thought it was helpful to sort of split up parliamentary business on the basis of sex and gender, or is it just necessary because that's the way things are?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, we do. There's 20 All Party Parliamentary groups for women's issues, or there's around 20, and I think we have around three for men's issues. So although there's more men in Parliament than women, and that is something that we're all conscious that we need to encourage women into Parliament. Sex is. It's something that the world, we all know the differences between men and women, and there are different issues between men and women. So, I mean, if everything's inclusive, then that's fine. But I don't necessarily think that it is. So this is why we need this group. We need somebody speaking up for men, and I'm quite happy to take that role on. Because, like I said at the beginning, I think if we can look after men, then we will automatically make life a better place for women.
Good. And do you think you're influential in that task?
2 years in, I think I'm getting there. It's quite a job being a member of Parliament, and it's quite a responsibility being a chair of an All Party Parliamentary Group as well. And it's not something that I take lightly. But I think I have got an influence, and that can be good and bad. So this is why I try and think carefully about what I say. I try and be respectful of everyone around me, and I try and think how it looks from both sexes as well, because I don't want to come across. I think a lot of people might think that when you stand up for men, then you're automatically against women, and I think that's an immature thing to think. But I'm careful that I hope it doesn't come across like that. I am genuinely doing it because I think if we look after men, we'll get a better society for all. And I've got a daughter, I've got a wife. I want them looked after too, and I think it's really, really important.
Thanks. That's a really good way of putting it, I think. How do you decide what kind of issues you're going to focus on?
I mean, we asked the All Party Parliamentary Group, the APPG. I'll say that, it's much easier. We said the APPG. We asked that we email them the issues that men are facing, the ones that are seen every day, and we just said which ones do you want to choose to pick. So the next subject that we're taking speakers on is men's suicide. The first one was a boy today. The second one was a men's health strategy, and the next one is suicide in men. So, but I mean, there's an array of subjects. But I'm quite conscious that we don't just try and tick off all the boxes and say we've done a report on that. We really do need to see some actual change. Otherwise, it's just another report that sits on somebody's desk or sits in somebody's inbox. So I'm conscious that the men's health strategy, that I keep on lobbying for that continually, because what's the point in having a report sat on my desk? I mean, it's nice to email a report out, and it's lovely for people to email back and say that's a really good read, Nick, well done. But if that's all it achieves, you really may as well have not bothered at all. So we need to follow this through. And I mean, I asked in Parliament PMQs the other week about a men's minister and a men's health strategy. I've had meetings with Health Secretary Sajid Javid about it. I've spoke to Health Minister Ed Arger. I've spoke to Health Minister Maria Caulfield. I'm continually at this, and I think that's what we should do as MPs. But I think that's what the public should do too. I do sometimes think that the public think that if you write to your MP, then that's one letter should solve it, and it's not like that. It's not like that being an MP, and it's not like that as an individual. If you really want to achieve something, you've got to keep on at it, and it can take years. And I think we have to be realistic with these things. It can take 5 years, 10 years, it can take 30 years for things to change, but you've got to keep on. And while I'm in this position, then I will continue asking for a men's health strategy and a men's minister until I see something change. So we see some of these statistics drop massively. So all of a sudden we see a massive reduction in men's suicide. Well, then fantastic. And if we see a massive reduction in prostate cancer, we see a huge reduction in the men that are struggling with alcohol and obesity, and a huge reduction in mental health issues, then we'll stop. There'll be no need for it. But while ever there's a need for it, then it's my job to keep on doing it while I'm in this position. And I hope to be in this position for a long time, but we'll let the electorate decide that.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. That point about persistence is something that Naomi and I talk about a lot, because it's always cropping up in the conversations that we're having with people, that if you want something, you really have to work persistently at getting it.
Yeah.
Picking up just something that you said a moment ago, when you said that you'd say APPG because it's easier to say, it's also much easier to say than supporting male victims of crime considered violence against women and girls report. How did you come up with that title? I
didn't. The APPG didn't, and we wrote to the minister about it with immediate effect. So No, definitely. I mean, it's not. Well, I mean, it's just ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, it just. I'm sorry, it is. There's no other way to put it. I mean, I'm very supportive of many of my colleagues, and I will continue to be supportive of them. But sometimes you just got to call things out for what they are, and unfortunately, that's not a good title, and the document's not what it should be either. So you see, when you try and incorporate, you asked earlier about should we be splitting topics up by sex? Well. If we're only going to be an afterthought in a document that is there for women, and we're just going to be an appendix or something, then I'm sorry, then that's what we need to stand up and say, no, this is not right. And I do truly believe, and I've said this already to you, we've had I don't think we can police our way out of violence against women and girls, and I don't think we can put enough people in prisons to violence against women and girls. I think we need to get to the core problem. Why is it happening? And it is majority men I know it happens. I know some men are obviously struggling a lot. There's violence at home to men, I understand that, but the majority of violence against women and girls is caused by men. So we need a minister to men to find out why that is happening. So let's stop that from happening. And one way we stop that from happening is looking at all the issues that are going on in men's lives, all the issues, not silo working, not looking at each individual problem, look at it overall. An overarching strategy, and I believe we need a minister, or at least an ambassador or a czar, to look at that as a whole, take an holistic view of it, and find out what is going wrong, because something obviously is. And I think if we do that, then we can really make a difference for the lives of women and girls.
Well, I think there are some interesting stats as well, though, Nick. So until the 1960s, men and women were killed at roughly even rates. So 50% of murder victims were female and 50% were male. But now 75% of all victims are male. And I think what we see a lot of is discussion about women not being safe on the street, which as a woman, because there's a lot of coverage of that, most women I know would, if so long as they could, they'd avoid walking home late at night on their own. And yet actually, not only are men killed at much higher rates, but also men are much more likely to be killed on the street. So only most women are killed by someone they know within their home or someone else's home, whereas 38% of men are killed on the street as opposed to 11% of women. So I think sometimes these policies actually might have a paradoxical effect of we're really concerned about women, but obviously anyone being killed is a problem, but the proportion of women that have been killed has gone down as opposed to up. And men are obviously taking up more of that group now.
Whether we're trying to help men and reduce the amount of women that they kill, or we're trying to help men to reduce the men they kill, we've still got the same problem. We've still got men out there who are doing something that they shouldn't be. So that's what we need to do. So granted, yeah, we help women, like I said, but granted, just exactly what you've said, we help men too. I think it was 168 women or something last year, 416 men that were murdered. I think I've not got the figures in front of me, so please don't quote me exact on that. But yeah, you're right. But the common denominator is the man that's actually doing the crime, and that's who we need to. Why is that happening? We need to go back and say, why is that happening?
So I wonder whether the strategy would have been better framed as a strategy to address male violence rather than a strategy that's to reduce violence against women, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand
because you might actually end up with different solutions looking at it from that angle as opposed to looking at it from the other angle.
I can take your point. I can take your point there. We want as many solutions as we can, really, don't we? I mean, we want to look at it from as many angles as we can. But yeah, I do take your point. But getting back to the original question, it's not right that report was labelled like it was, and it's not right that it wasn't a full in-depth report. and the outcomes of a report like that are always going to be weak, I'm afraid, not going to achieve what they want to achieve.
Thank you. We've both spent many years working within the criminal justice system, which obviously, as you've referred to, is disproportionately men that come within that remit. And it's really good to hear you talking about having a broader vision of understanding what the causes of crime are. One of the things that's very striking is the difference in how male and female prisoners are commonly discussed. So it's commonly acknowledged that female prisoners have a history of child abuse and trauma, and yet that's spoken about much less in relation to men, although our experience is that that is very much men's history too. What needs to happen to help policymakers realise this?
I think people like yourself and I can do an awful lot in educating these people and letting them know what's actually happening out there. I think one of the issues is with that, I think men don't always open up and don't always say what's happened in their lives. And when they do begin to open up, maybe they open up to deaf ears. So maybe we need to get men speaking more, maybe we need to listen more. And then when people in our position hear these things, we need to make sure that the people who actually can make a difference listen too. It is a problem. I mean, men do have an issue talking, and I would say I was guilty of that myself. You know, it's not something I like opening up about. When I go out with friends, male friends, I don't particularly talk about how I feel. I talk about what work we've done this week, or maybe what's been on the TV, or what we're doing this weekend. I don't ever talk about how I'm feeling. I just not something that's happened. So obviously, if men have been something that's as tragic as what that is, at such a young age, which can affect them for the rest of their life. And I think there's an awful lot. I don't know, and so I'm speaking uneducated here, but I do believe some of these people do think there's a shame in it, as though some of it was their fault. Then they're embarrassed to open up about it, and it just compounds the issues. Where I do believe women do talk more openly, and these things that have happened in their life do come to the forefront more quickly. So I think that's probably one of the issues that we've got. But I mean, if you ask, I say this a few times on a few places. If you ask a man if he's okay, he'll say, "Yeah, I'm fine." And then if you ask him if he's really okay, then he'll stumble a little bit, and they'll think you're being a little bit odd asking him that question. You're like, "Why are you asking me that? No one's ever asked me that before." And you'll get an awkward silence. And I think it's maybe something that we should try with each other, just to prove a point. You know, I mean, are you really okay? No, are you really okay? And it's just not something that we're accustomed to doing, and it's going to take you're not going to fix this overnight. It's going to take years and years and years to do. But the more we talk about it openly, and the more people listen, and the more people think, well, yeah, it is okay to say this. I mean, we don't want... You've got to take people in confidence. It doesn't have to be everywhere we go we talk about it, but I think everyone should have someone that they can speak to in confidence, really. I mean, at school you had best friends, did it? And I think some maybe women still have best friends that they confide in, and maybe men don't as much, should I say? Not as so. But I'm only speaking from my own personal experience there. I mean, we'll be taking information, evidence sessions on that, but I'm just speaking from my own. From my own experience as a nearly 50-year-old man.
Well, given you're talking about how hard it is to be candid, I suppose that leads us to the next question, really, which MPs must be much more conscious of risk than ever, given the threats that MPs are exposed to. Have you ever felt frightened doing your work, and if so, how do you cope with this?
No, I've not. I've not felt frightened. Not really.
Have you really?
No, I haven't. No, that's very funny. No, I haven't. I mean, when Sir David Amess was attacked, was stabbed. It was. I was actually sat at this desk when I heard the news, and it was the most horrendous news. It was a lovely man. He actually invited me into his office, and I think he was doing it with quite a few of the new MPs that had come in. Come and see me. And so I did actually manage to have an hour with him in his office. And his office was it was something to see. There was memorabilia and books and all kinds of things everywhere. And I sat down, I had an hour with him, and all MPs are busy. But it was such a lovely fella, and he helped me an awful lot. He gave me some really, really good advice. And I was meant to be going out with him the week after it happened. I was meant to be going on a day trip with another APPG. And so I was really looking forward to going and spending a day with him, because I knew I would have got to know him a little bit better. And he's a senior MP, been there for 20, 30 years, whatever he'd done. So you do feel a little bit... you do feel a little bit vulnerable when something like that happens, but it never stops David doing his job. I mean, obviously, events like that had happened before, and he just went out and did his job. And I think if we don't go out and do our job, then these people have won. They've won, because they're stopping my constituents see me, they're stopping democracy happening, they're stopping all kinds of things. So I think it's important, but I'm a local MP. I know Doncaster. I know the people of Doncaster, and I've never felt not safe in Doncaster. But it is awful when you hear things like that. And they always say it always happens to the nicest people. And I wish everyone could have met Sir David, because he was a true gentleman.
Yeah, it's awful for people to be killed going about doing some business that's actually in the benefit of others. That seems particularly unfortunate, doesn't it?
Yes.
A few of our guests have spoken about the importance of compassionate leadership to ensure a culture of compassion trickles down. All have emphasised that compassionate leadership involves taking responsibility, so it's not just about saying nice things to one another, but the compassion is part of that. Is there much of a culture of compassion in the House of Commons?
It can come across quite hard, especially in the chamber. The chamber is a bit of an anomaly to how the place runs. But yeah, I mean we're busy people, so on a day-to-day basis, you probably don't see the chamber's a funny place, because it can go from it can be a really people can get really quite angry in there 1 minute, and then a second later the chamber can fall silent when an MP talks of a constituent that's really struggling or had a hard time. So I think there is compassion there, definitely there is, and I work with an awful lot of good people, and a lot of the time we're not painted as we are, and we make silly mistakes, and we do things that are not always right. But the majority, in fact, the majority of people there are wanting to do or go into it to make the country a better place, and part of that is understanding the problems that people are going through, really understanding them, and seeing how genuinely we can help things get better. I am a big believer in personal responsibility. I mean, I don't this blaming the government for everything, and maybe blaming the police for everything, or blaming the teachers for everything, and blaming. I don't do the blame culture particularly. I don't. We've got to take personal responsibility. But if there is things that are stopping people progress and things that are in the way, then we should do what we can to do that. But I mean, I try people are going to be going through. There's people going through hard times. There is, and I think it's important as MPs that we understand that, and we do show compassion, and it's genuine compassion. I mean, and I do. But I mean, I have to hear some real awful stories when I do surgeries, and some of them are really quite hard to swallow. But this is what we have to deal with, and there's a certain amount of tough love, and there's a certain amount of I really do need to help you, because you can't help yourself in this situation. And I think trying walking that line can be very difficult sometimes, because I think you can get it wrong. I think you can see somebody and think, no, you just, you know what I mean, we just need to be a little bit tougher with you to get you where you need to be, and you can get a wrong call, and then if you do, it can have consequences. So you've got to be careful with it. I hope that explains it enough. It's a bit of a difficult question, really.
No, I get that. And I suppose as you were talking, I was thinking about comparisons with psychiatric hospitals or prisons, and this idea that, you know, as you said, most MPs become MPs because they actually want to do something good for society, and most nurses become nurses because they have a wish to care. I would say that's also true for a lot of prison officers, and yet we've seen kind of like awful scandals where actually patients have been treated quite punitively, or see prisoners being treated in quite a brutal way. So it's not necessarily why people join those services, but they end up behaving in that way. And I think what we can see over time is that actually, if you want an organisation to be compassionate, there has to be some focus on ensuring that is developed within the organisation. And so that's what made me wonder, you know, could more be done to make Parliament more compassionate? Because ultimately, I guess that will be reflected in the policies that come out of a government, and in terms of how compassionate those policies are. If MPs don't feel they're working within a compassionate ethos, if you like.
Yeah, there's lots of subjects where we could, as I say, I've got colleagues on the other side of the house, and they can look at a policy one way and I can look at it another, and I do truly believe that I'm doing the right thing, and they can truly believe that I'm doing the wrong thing, and I can argue with it, and I still think there's compassion in my argument, but it's a fine line, as I said, and we don't always get it right, but I do try. And that's pretty much all I can say. I can't really expand any more on that. I mean, there is so many different areas that we have to cover, and I think your life skills where you've been through them yourself. I mean, I always say I was made redundant, and I've employed people all my life, and I've only had to make 2 people redundant in 30 years. But I remembered being made redundant myself, and I remember it being the worst thing in the world. It was the money, but it was the fact that I was leaving 50 colleagues behind who had become my life, and I was only a very young man when I was made redundant, but having such a great time at work, and I think it's them sort of experiences that help you when I've lost a parent, I've lost a brother, I've lost all these different people, and it's them sort of life experiences that help you deal with people, and you can't buy that. And in all fairness, I wish I didn't have some of them experiences. They're just, some of them are truly, truly awful experiences. But when you have had to deal with them, and you know what it looks like, then it does help you help other people. And I think, I've had quite a varied life, so hopefully that'll help me help my constituents, and that's all you can ask, isn't it, really?
Well, it is, and I think that's a great example of why it's so important for people to have had jobs where they are interacting in the real world, outside of Parliament, in order to understand the impact of decisions. But finally, we always like to ask our guests how they manage to hold on to their own sense of well-being and compassion when seeing parts of society where people are really quite distressed. And you can hear your compassion and wish to do good in performing your role, but you also referred earlier to also hearing some really tragic stories in surgery. So how do you ensure you stay compassionate? What kind of things do you do to look after yourself?
I'm a Christian. I've got a really strong faith. It helps me every day. I've not always been a Christian. I became a Christian in my late 30s. So I believe, I think that's definitely the bedrock. That's what I I believe in, and I'm very fortunate that I've got that faith, and it's a extremely strong faith. I would say I've gone through an awful lot of things, and some good, some bad, some indifferent, but the constant has been my faith, and I'm very thankful, very thankful for that. And I've got a fantastic wife as well. She's amazing, bless her. So that helps too.
I've got a final question, Nick, because just listening to you, and I picked up, you mentioned Doncaster several times. I've only been to Doncaster once in my life, and it was at probably January or February 2020, so just before everything closed down, and I was going to visit an approved premises, and I've got a very clear memory of it because I got off the train at the station, walked down the high street, and I'm not someone who takes a great deal of care of his hair, so I went into the first barber's that there was on the high street, and there were two young men there. I don't know where they were from, certainly wasn't Doncaster, so they gave me a very decent haircut and charged me £5. Well, I almost fell off the stool because I don't know what you pay in Westminster. I bet it's more than the £5. So I felt guilty about it. I gave them a very healthy tip. But obviously that was saying something very powerful about the difference between a place like Doncaster and a place where you're now spending half your life and doing a lot of your work, Westminster. What hopes do you have as one of the new Tory MPs of bringing things up from that? So that's a bit of a cheeky question. I appreciate we didn't warn you.
No, it's a fantastic question. I mean, an MP really, I mean, the APPGs are extremely important. My single job really is to make Doncaster a better place for everyone to live, and for the opportunities to be there for the young people. There's an awful lot. There's a brain drain from Doncaster. There's an awful lot of clever people that they go to some quite good schools in Doncaster. We've got some good schools, but as soon as they leave school, it's university, and then it's the Golden Triangle or South East, and we don't particularly see them again. So we need something that's going to keep people here and attract people here. So I've lobbied continually for a new hospital because I think desperately we need one, and it will be a teaching hospital, and we've got a site ready for that. And I think a new hospital in the town centre would do wonders for the town centre to get people there. I'm lobbying for the Great British Rail headquarters, which is would be another huge achievement for Doncaster. I think a lot of town centres have lost a lot because there's no reason for people to go anymore. We used to go and book holidays there. We used to go to the bank. We used to go to the opticians. We used to lots of different things. We've got no reason to go anymore. Well, if you put a hospital in the middle of Doncaster, which is a site for it, and you had Great British Rail headquarters there, then all of a sudden you've got a reason for people to be in the middle of Doncaster, which is really good. And then over in Don Valley, we've got the airport, and we're hoping for an advanced manufacturing research centre there, what's similar to the one that they have in Sheffield. And if we manage to get that there, then we could end up with the likes of Boeing in Doncaster, which would obviously bring some real quality jobs to Doncaster, which would be great. And I mean, we've got so many other things as well. I mean, we've got I think it's the oldest flat race course in the world. We've got the Yorkshire Wildlife Park, which is absolutely amazing. I go there quite often. It's a really great place. And I mean, I spent a lot of time touring the UK, like many people have done through COVID. We've not been able to go abroad. And I think this country is an amazing. Anybody who knocks this country, I mean, it's the best country. I mean, it really is. I love England. I love Scotland. I love the UK as a whole. And I do like Doncaster. I love Doncaster to bits, but I've been all the way around it, and I think Doncaster punches well above its weight. I think Doncaster's a great place. And if you can get a haircut for £5, well, then it's worth that anyway, isn't it? So there you go. But no, I mean, it is a. I didn't want to be a member of Parliament anywhere else. There's nowhere else. If they offered me a safest seat there is with a 20,000 majority, I wouldn't take it. I'm not going nowhere. If I win this one again, then I'll keep on doing it. If I lose, then I'm not going anywhere else. This is it.
Brilliant.
So come back to Doncaster.
It may happen.
Love to see
Thank you.
you.
I think you've come across a very honest and compassionate person, Nick. Thanks very much.
Thank you, that's great.